What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I sat down with Vishnu Gettu, head of sales at Athelas. Athelas is a technology company that aims to be basically the next Microsoft equivalent for the healthcare space. If you're interested in reaching out to Vishnu, looking to join his team, please reach out to him via LinkedIn or in the email in the description below. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the podcast.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey,
legit stuff, man.
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, so I didn't get a chance to watch the podcast that you've already done. But what was that about?
That was actually so it was one of our sales advisors, and we essentially had it's this guy that I meet with every now and then regularly. He's like just an absolute like sales vet. He's like been CRO at like 2 or 3 different companies, head of sales at different jobs. So we brought him on as literally just as like an advisor, and I meet with him like once a month or so just to get like my career development going. And he just randomly texted me. He was like, "Yo, I was just scouring your LinkedIn. I remember, you started off as like the first salesperson at a company with 12 people, valued or raising 70 million. And 5 years later, I realized you're still there. And now you're running kind of the whole sales operation there. And we want to like interview and chat with folks that are, Series A employees that have seen larger and smaller companies and kind of like scale and go from there." So it's pretty funny. He just kind of reached out casually. Didn't have this good of a setup. It was just literally over Zoom.
Yeah, this is a little bit overkill, but there's a piece of me that if I have all of the great equipment, I'll put great effort into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
curious too. So 2 things you just said. So I would like to hear your story, how you got into Athelas and maybe your come up along the way and how you got the opportunity to even be in front of these people to get into your position. And the second thing I'm curious about is you say Series A, and I understand there's like Series A, Series B, Series C funding, but I have no idea what that means. And I would imagine that a lot of people don't. So could you talk on those 2 things?
Yeah, for sure. So just to kind of go back into, my story and stuff. So again, been about 5 years now since I joined Athelas. It started actually with my brother going to school with, one of the co-founders of the company at USC, and I was just finishing up college, working at a pretty, mediocre finance company out in Southern California, and, very below average pay-ish, but it was a cool opportunity because I was working directly with the CEO, so I was like thinking about, hey, should I actually make a leap and go join like a startup? I always kind of was attracted to startups. Sexy, like speed is just like everything. Like it's always like a ton of action. Like I feel like I work well under chaos. So I was entertained to the idea when he was like, "Hey, they're building out a sales team. You could be like one of the first few people, experiment with it." And the kind of thought process I had behind it was like, there's actually no downside to that because I was literally 21 years old, right? So I was like, there's really no downside to even me joining that company. 2 months later, that company crumbling, and I go somewhere else because the value I felt like that I was gonna like actually pick up on and learn in those 2 months is huge, right? So I was like, there's no downside to it. Also from the Bay Area, so it wasn't like I was going like a foreign place. I was like, okay, screw it. I'm down to take a shot. It obviously sucked initially because like you got to leave your friends, your college homies, like the whole crew. And I feel like that's actually the tougher part is like getting out of your comfort zone. But then I realized like joining a startup is like all about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I was like, okay, like I can get behind that. So I took the leap, moved everything down there. And the first day, kind of joined into the company and literally probably 2 times the size of this room, 12 employees. It's funny, the first day I actually showed up in like a full-on suit, like first official real job, thinking it's all serious, and they were all just like finding it so funny because startup culture in the Bay Area is like the complete opposite of like suits and shit. It's like straight up just like casual like jackets, like a lot of the engineers are showing up. Like our founder was showing up in like basketball shorts past his knees and dress socks.
That's awesome.
So I was just like, oh wow, like I see what kind of vibe it is, and it's
That's
good because
awesome.
it's not too overly professional. It's like super casual. I mean, most of the company rolled in at like 10:30, and it's not like people are just lazy. It's like the whole work dynamic is really different in the startup world. And again, there's a lot of autonomy too within the role. Like we have unlimited PTO, and at first I thought that's the sickest thing ever, but they do things like that. So if you don't have a dedicated time to do PTO, then you don't necessarily feel the need to use it and take it, right? And it works. So you just do things like that. And I'm digressing a little bit too, but there's just a lot of cool features about like why I was like interested in kind of joining a startup. Obviously, like the opportunity to like personally develop was kind of my goal of like saying, hey, if I take this opportunity, like, and actually am able to like promote within and grow and work with like incredibly smart people, I will get to a point where I'm now in an environment where I will automatically up level even if I'm not trying to, because you're just surrounding yourself by people like that, right? So that's kind of how like, I was getting into the whole idea of going into the job, like, got committed to it as well. And again, like, to address your other point around like really Series A, Series B, like this stuff was also very foreign to me. Like when I was younger, it's not like I knew a ton about startups. It's not like I knew about the different valuations and how companies really raise money. So it's all definitely a big learning curve. But I think at the end of the day, like, to break it down in simple terms, smaller companies will go through a rigorous motion to even become a medium-sized, or not even, they'll go through a really rigorous motion to even stay afloat as a small company simply by raising and just going through different rounds of capital. And a lot of the times they'll start off with friends and family. Then you move on to something a little bit more professional, a little bit more legitimate, and you go either two routes. You go basically VC route, venture capitalists, or you basically will go through, smaller motions just around like internal network where it's not an official VC backer. So we basically got our Series A. I actually joined Athelas when they already had their Series A. So it was a Series A company, which essentially just means that there was one initial funding round that they raised. I think at that time it was like 72 million. Probably 72 million, some change. And we had very, very, very credible backers. So Sequoia Capital is probably, the most accredited venture capitalist firm in the country. So that's also a big reason why we get such good talent in terms of employees and clientele, is because people are attracted to like our ability to work with VCs that can say, holy smokes, like these guys actually are willing to, work with the company like Athelas, and at the same time, these guys are actually willing to put in a ton of money into the company as well too. So with the Series A round that we raised, you move on to different levels, and I can kind of touch on this throughout like the convo and just like chat about like Series A to Series B to Series C. But essentially, it's just different rounds of fundraising. And you need to be in a business position to be able to actually go and do that. Some companies raise way too much earlier and their valuation skyrockets, and they just cash negative and they end up not even using enough of the money or overusing the money. So it just kind of depends on where you're at. But
how does the dynamic of the company change through the levels of series, through the funding rounds? Is there like an inflection point at each of those things where the entire the operations of the company are shifting, the culture of the company shifts, the goals of the company shifts, or is it just the same thing but you have more resources?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's definitely like a step up. Like I think when you raise another round and you move on from Series A to Series B, like I think like the brand of your company starts to change a little bit more, and people have a little bit more of a chip on their shoulder. I think the biggest reason is you got through like one big hurdle, and the second biggest thing is you do feel a little bit more comfortable now that like resources, capital, and labor have definitely like gone up, and you feel a little bit more supported. So typically after like our recent history of like raising and moving up a Series A to Series B to Series C or whatever it may be, is we almost immediately boost hiring most of the time. And that's like, again, some of the bigger reasons why you're raising a round too, is because you want to deploy resources. So we consistently, boosted hiring by like 10% across like most departments, whichever would really need it. So that's something that you notice. And it's fun because the team's going to get a lot bigger, which is always exciting. We've also done a good job, I think, more recently. And again, like I can't speak for every company, but historically, at least what I've seen is we do a good job in actually like now diversifying our product portfolio after a specific round too. So typically there'll be new teams that are dedicated within those pods that are like, okay, hey, now we're going to open up like, for example, the Athelas pill track or RPM, like what we were talking about yesterday. So different things like that. So it definitely promotes like a whole new gateway of like, okay, we're taking it to another level, building a new team, we're putting in more money into this. And things just get spicy. Things just get really fun. And it's super exciting. It's also just like, hey, pat on your back for getting through that first round. But overall, it's not like you're noticing like a massive shift where it's like a massive, massive change. I think Series A, and I probably, I should have said this even earlier. Series A in some ways is like the most impressive achievement actually, because that's your first round. Once you get your first round, people are more confident in giving you money. But that first VC, the first backer that say, I have no history about how your company's really performed, nobody else has backed you, I'm going to take a leap and throw money at you, that's like the most impressive too. So that's when the company's like hot and growing. And then after that, it's basically just like how well can you perform to either maintain the cash that you have in the bank or continue to raise.
Understood. So it's ironic a little bit that your connection to Athelas came through your older brother, because my connection to my business partners came through my older brother.
True.
But I was wondering, do you have any advice to the average person that may not have an older brother with connections? How would you increase your probability of crossing paths with an opportunity like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I personally think that it takes a ton of proactiveness. And again, like that might be considered like a cheesy answer, but I'll tell you the difference of doing that when you're young is so different than doing that when you're older. Because I think there's a difference between like getting old and then taking action on like trying to find other positions, other companies. You're doing that because you went through a period of time where you probably didn't feel that exciting of an environment when you had your job or the people you work with or the product that you're selling, whatever it may be, whatever industry. So you're reactively getting proactive, right? And I think the way to look at it is get proactive before you're forced to get proactive. That's like the different people that I think young people should do. So on that note, I think taking a really, really keen interest in understanding really what interests you, like what can you actually spend, 5-7 days a week, 50 hours, 60 hours a week, like thinking about nonstop. Because if you're joining a startup, you need to make sure that like you're looking at this way more than just a job. And that's kind of the way I looked at it at least too. So like in order to even start to search and to think about things like this, I think you need to like think about what you really want out of like, a younger company. It doesn't always have to be like a super early stage startup. It can be like a late stage startup, a mid stage startup. But I think you just need to spend a lot of time critical thinking and understand like, what are the things that actually get me excited? Am I actually ready to commit to like a non-typical work lifestyle? Like it is not any 9-to-5 type of shit. Like this is not the type of position you're in. This is also a very self-sufficient position that you have to get yourself to be open to. If you're a salesperson at a startup, you're not just a salesperson. You're going to be managing your own accounts. You're going to be deploying your own deals. You're going to be building sales ops processes. And these are things that will take you away from just selling. And you miss your quota. You can't be like, oh, well, you have me doing account management. You have me deploying deals. Like that's what you signed up for. The company's not going to be hiring an account manager for a 2-person sales team, at least not every company and not early stage too. So again, I want to be specific with the things that I talk about here because it's valuable to know what you're really getting yourself into. And I don't mean to say this to scare folks off of like, not getting into a startup by any means, but it is important to set a good perspective of what you really want. And I think just networking, like again, like standard answer, but young people don't network enough. I think older people network again. So it's that proactiveness that says like, hey, and I'll give you an example. I'll give you a cool example that I would do earlier on. It is something that me and my brother would actually do quite a bit is junior to senior year of college. Every time we would go back home to visit our family, we were always thinking about, my brother's 2 years older than me, so he always had like a little bit of a head start, but we would both do things like, go back home, visit our families, and literally sit down with our dad for like a couple hours when we got back and just literally chat with him about all of his friends and what they're up to right now and have our dad just like casually set up like dinners where he's like, hey, like, Steve, I haven't seen you in a while. You want to get some like, dinner next week? And then he just brings the kids along and we chat with like, his friends. We learn about like what they're up to too. And my dad's not a salesperson; he's an engineer too. But it's valuable to actually learn from elderly people and from experienced people. Like take advantage of your parents, take advantage of just folks with experience, because I think you can soak up a lot of wisdom from them. And then, yeah, I mean, ultimately you can get really proactive with understanding like what these folks have gone through, and that can help like kind of shape your way. Because before like going into a startup, I did do a lot of research into, just my personal networks experiences within that realm, and then kind of piggybacked off of that. So yeah, you can learn a lot that way, man.
What were the like challenges and hurdles that you faced when you initially joined? Did you have like a feeling like the imposter syndrome set in? Did what sort of stresses were you under there? Because that had to all be new to you, right? But you have all these responsibilities that you just listed.
Yeah. I think it was definitely. I think like what I realized is when I was coming into it, I actually wasn't feeling super, worried about like my age or my lack of experience. I think I just came in incredibly confident, and I think the reason why is because of the culture of the company and the way they hired me. So it's important to find the right company, because if you feel like you're walking in an environment and you're not feeling like you're confident or you're excited, and again, like it's not like just because you're feeling nervous or like potentially not fully aware of like how this role is going to pan out, and you got some doubts here and there. Nothing wrong with that at all, but there was a moment during the interview process where I was like, hey, this is a true story. I actually asked her in the interview itself, the co-founder of the company. I said, why? Towards the end, I was like, to be honest, like, why would you consider, hiring me? Like, why would you want to hire me versus the amount of talent that you can go out and get from these larger companies, from these bigger companies, from incredibly successful salespeople that have a proven track record of 10 to 15 years of quota attainment, of large revenue goals and quotas that they've carried, and dozens of things. Like, what are you looking at a young college kid for with 6 months of door-to-door sales experience and like a couple finance companies, right? Like what gets you going about that? Because I was trying to figure out why they were kind of going after somebody like me. And they gave me a really cool answer. And this, it's a story that's kind of a side story, but it helps me get perspective into like why I was feeling so good about the job. Is they basically just said, hey, we really value folks with limited experience and folks that are actually on the younger side, simply because they come in with this incredibly more open mind than the average person with experience. And they were looking to basically mold a culture around these people that didn't have any pre-existing notions of like how companies should be run, how a sales team should be run, how a product should be sold. So they're basically building like the epitome of like what they think Athelas culture should look like, because this person has no existing like experience.
Everybody's malleable.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
So that's kind of like what they were doing too. And I obviously got a little bit of what's the term that you used? Yeah, basically just like a little bit of nervous, probably more progressing into like leadership and stuff too as a younger leader, but nothing too crazy.
Gotcha. Well, let's pivot a little bit. I want to talk about San Francisco. Mm-hmm. So much different than Indianapolis.
Absolutely.
So, cost of living is one thing, but we talked a little bit about it yesterday, and I thought one of the things that was really interesting was how you said the demographic build of the people there and the networking opportunities that you have in a city like that. Mm-hmm. I think that's really cool, because we technically have some of that here, but it's such a much smaller scale, and it's not, you have to look for it here. Mm-hmm. It seems like you accidentally find it in San Fran. Yeah,
it's true. We were talking about this. It is crazy. And it kind of goes back to just like how you surround yourself, how you're like naturally surrounding yourself by such great talent. Mm-hmm. And not just within like the sales world, like literally across like every type of like really tech out there. And I think it's just because the competition is so fierce that you're in a position of every other person that you meet is like a founder of some sort. And I was telling you this yesterday, it's not even that impressive anymore when you meet like a founder that's running like a 10, 15, $20 million company, because that's what everybody's doing out there too. So that aspect is really cool. And there's a lot of diversity in talent too. Obviously it's like the tech capital of the world, and you see and hear crazy success stories. But to actually meet a lot of those people, it's super valuable, and it's really like inspirational to understand where a lot of these kids started and how far some of them have got. But it's totally true. Like it's a bubble of its own though, because when you leave, you realize that those type of individuals are not as common elsewhere. And again, it's not like people are just not as intelligent or smart or successful.
You just have an extreme concentration in that city for some
It's
reason
just
because there's so much resource there.
There's so much resource there. And that's
so
why
what,
VCs
you
love
said
it.
what was the average age range you'd say of the people that build up San Francisco right now?
In San Francisco specifically, I'd say probably 25 to 35.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of kids out there.
It literally is a bunch of kids, yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I talked to my like aunties and uncles and stuff, and they're like, "How's San Francisco? We haven't gone in months." And elderly people don't go that much over there because it's just like young kids now, and then they're all in the suburbs.
That's awesome. I mean, that's really cool. I can't wait to visit sometime.
Yeah.
That just seems really neat.
Absolutely.
Completely different culture.
You got to come out for sure.
So in a practical sense, for the kid that's coming out of college right now, or so maybe even younger that doesn't sort of have a direction yet, what's like the first step to take in finding an opportunity and finding what it is that they're actually truly passionate about, that they can sustain working 50, 60 hours a week on and feel comfortable with it? What's the first step that you would take?
I think the first step is starting as early as you can and actually putting yourself out there in terms of getting experiences open. Like, take internships more seriously. Like, I don't think I did that enough, as much as I probably should have. Like, my sister and brother were more of like the classic, like academic, like great grades. That was never me. I was never like an academic kid by any means. Didn't do as many extracurriculars as I probably should have. But I think get very involved with like extracurriculars within school, get involved with internships, go to career fairs. Like, trust me, when you're young and in college and in school, it's just so easy to ignore that type of stuff. But you can find and meet some pretty awesome opportunities and awesome people out there to actually help like elevate your career path. But the most important thing is, I'm not saying to do it just to be like your mom or dad and say, go to these events. Do it because you will gravitate towards things that you like. And you don't feel like when you're graduating college, you like don't know really what to do. Like, I don't have a career. I don't know where to go. I'm just going to, do work under my dad, work under my mom. Like, I think it just gives you perspective to like understand what opportunities exist out there. And also just making sure that you actually capitalize on a lot of like your relationships around you too, like your friends especially. So one thing that I did is I always knew I was like going to go into sales too. I enjoyed the career path. I enjoyed the autonomy of, you're in control of your own finances based on how hard you work. Like, I think that's a cool concept to me. It's like the harder I work, the more money I can make. And sales is very tangible. It's very black and white. Like, you either hit your quota 4 quarters in a row or you don't. You're labeled good or you're labeled, this isn't the right fit, right? So for me, I like that like simplicity to it. And I thought of like, okay, if I can find a career path that's very black and white. And again, like I say this versus, and I don't mean to, throw shade on other career paths, but I'll give you like accounting, for example. Like, you could be in that same role for years on years, and it takes you 5, 6, 7, 8 years to actually like climb the ladder. And that was too slow for me. I needed something like quick, rapid, something I can have control over. So you got to spend a lot of time thinking about like how you function and like what kind of a personality you have. But going back to my example of how to like get out there as a younger person and like figure out exciting things to do and like what kind of career path you dive into, is do stuff with your friends. That's makes things a lot easier. Like, go do an internship like with a friend. Like, go try like working extra hours or with your friend, with a girlfriend, like whatever it may be, makes it 100 times better. So like sophomore year of college, everybody's getting ready for summer. They're having a great time. And I took the leap of doing door-to-door sales out in Sacramento in Central California, like 100 degrees a day for like 4 months. But I did it with one of my best friends, and we made some pretty damn good money in 4 months for college kids, and probably one of the most valuable life lessons that I've ever learned and experienced when you're knocking doors in like rich neighborhoods as this like pest control salesman. You would think it's so greasy, but it's so valuable. Just like the ability to take rejection and go up to somebody's door and like 30 minutes walk away with their credit card information and a 12-month subscription to pest control. And again, this was 100% a legitimate company, but the concept of like going so cold. So like, again, I loved the idea of like, holy smokes, like that conversion of like zero warmth, completely cold, no interaction, no history of that relationship, and walking out completely, as friends and acquaintances, business partners and contracts and stuff is really awesome. So doing that was great. And that's just kind of an example of like things that nobody would want to do. But again, take some risks and do it while you're young, and it'll give you a lot of perspective. So that gave me like a lot of confidence. I was like, okay, if I enjoyed that, if I liked that hard work, like physical work, I can sit behind a computer, rip cold calls, and do a lot more travel and meet, guys like Xavier and see where the career path goes.
Very cool. On the flip side of that, you're now a leader in a very large company. What are you looking for in somebody that may cross paths with you? What characteristics are you looking for in team members that you might bring on under your team?
Yeah. I think I've touched on quite a few of them on and off through this conversation without directly mentioning it. But I think the two most important things for me personally that I gravitate, I interview probably 3 people a week for the past 5 years, or 3 years or so. And I think the two things that I really gravitate towards is probably work ethic and attitude. And maybe I'll throw in a third one.
How do you gauge that in an interview? I'm just curious because I do a lot of interviewing too. I'm just curious how do you pull that information, extract it from somebody in a short amount of time?
Yeah, true. So there's actually 5 things that I look for in interviews that I think are valuable for other people that are even just listening or curious. So one is work ethic, one is IQ, one is motor, one is overall EQ, and then trajectory. So those are 5 traits, and then I've designed kind of interview questions around those topics to be able to scope out if this person can be a good fit. And the interviews are very conversational. It's not like the question answer or anything. But how I actually go about trying to extract information around it is obviously through experience. But I do my best to try to place their specific personality, their traits, their character in an environment at Athelas and then see how that they can actually thrive. Because you can have a great work ethic, at working as, let's say, an account executive, a salesperson at Google. Not saying you don't have that, but is that same work ethic going to translate in an environment where, again, what I was saying earlier, you're wearing now 4 hats, you're your own account manager, you don't have the comfort of, 5 different support reps that can help you. You're now your own support rep, right? So I help try to paint a picture of does your same qualities translate in a completely different environment? And even if you're saying, I actually worked at a startup very similar to Athelas, I think specificity is key. I hate general answers, and that's why I'm hoping to be more specific even in this conversation too, beyond just people saying hey, I have a really strong work ethic, and I have a great attitude, and I work late hours. It's no, I need specific, clear-cut examples of things that you have done that show that you have a great work ethic, special projects that you've done, what were the impacts of that project itself. So again, the more specific, the better. So for anybody, honestly, just getting into recruiting, doing a lot of interviewing, I would prioritize detail and specificity as much as you possibly can. It goes a long way. And honestly, always be recruiting. They say always be selling. I say ABR, always be recruiting. Awesome. Because the best leaders bring in the best talent and vice versa. So always keep that muscle moving and you can go far.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's one of the biggest problems you've ever faced in your professional career, and how did you solve it?
Yeah. And quite a few. Biggest problems I faced in my professional career, I think at Athelas, which consists of most of my professional career, has probably been go-to-market motions. And what I mean by that is figuring out how to sell something that's never really been sold before. So there's different situations that I can relate to in that sense, where there's 2 verses to it. A couple of our products that we've sold at Athelas were literally the first of its kind, right? So there's no other company like that. And I'm not even saying that as a flex. I'm saying that as a fact that there is not a narrative set right now in the industry, in the economy, in the country. So if this is something that's for the customers or potential customers are hearing for the first time, it can be obviously construed as very sexy and attractive and nobody's doing this, great, you guys are. But at the same time, that comes with this whole notion of, why is nobody doing this? Does this even work? I've never heard of this. I don't even know what you're talking about. And there's this whole skeptical factor that's kind of, now in conjunction with your sales motion. And it's really difficult to do that. A lot of people think that you can monopolize a market just by having, one unique product that can solve all the problems. It's never as simple. So building a sales motion around that type of stuff can be pretty complex. And it takes a lot of A/B testing. It takes a lot of failing. You get some quarters where you miss your quota. You go through a lot of employees too. Your churn is kind of higher through the roof because you're trying to build a sales motion out of thin air. for a product that historically doesn't have as much, success as you would like to see. You can't compare it to too many other companies because it's a different product. Of course, you can copy and replicate different motions, but it's difficult to be able to do something that hasn't been done before with minimal context, minimal guidance, because you're kind of just freestyling as you go. It's like literally these crazy freestyle rappers. It's just like going on nonstop. It's like this and a whole other concept, but you're building out a team. You're hiring, 3 different department leaders. You're coaching and training these reps. You're getting the product developed. There's just so many things happening at once. You're doing it at such a fast pace because it's, the race to the market leader. And it's tough. It's a big problem to have. It's a great problem to have too in some ways, but it takes a lot to overcome, the problems in like a go-to-market motion. So I know there's a couple problems in there, but it's I think that's one that comes to mind.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of blanket advice that you would leave a younger audience with? Anything that we haven't touched on? You've given a lot of great advice.
Yeah. I think the biggest piece of advice that I'd probably give is be incredibly willing to take risks. I think the most valuable thing that you can do when you're young is taking risks. And again, I'm not like incredibly, old by any extent, so I don't want to sound overly wise here. But speaking with so many folks and experiences that I've come across is there have been so many situations where it's, I should have done this, if I did that, if I did this, like this would have happened. And that would and could and should is like cancer. And that shit is something that I just like try my best to
Comes
put
with regret.
myself in. Yeah, it comes with so much regret.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's like a toxic thing to have. And I've heard it in so many different situations where I want to basically set myself up in a position where 5 years from now, I don't want to feel like, okay, I should have done this, I could have done that. So for younger folks out there that are looking to kind of understand like what kind of careers to dive into, what kind of jobs to take on, I would 100% capitalize on the opportunities that you hear of, that you come across, that you think you're sticking your little toe in there, but you're not taking the full leap. Like jump on that shit and jump on it hard. Don't be afraid. You literally have so much time in your life to fail. You have so many people also to bounce things off of. If you're failing, there's other people that are failing with you. There's different avenues that you can take. So I would just be incredibly open to risk. And at the same time, be super, super hungry. I don't think I would have had any success at Athelas if I wasn't incredibly driven. I always tell my brother every time I have like my work anniversary for like a year, I always send him a message. I'm like, dude, thank you. Like, again, like this is the greatest opportunity I could have ever landed in my entire life. Like, you don't know how much I appreciate it. And he's like, what are you talking about, dude? He's like, I just told you about a job. You did all the work for 5 years. I just connected you. Like, he's like, I could have connected you and you could have sucked and then been gone in a second, right? So if you have those opportunities, like take full advantage of them and don't let them go. Because again, get rid of the should-haves, the could-haves, the what-ifs, and just really capitalize on everything that you can do that's in your power. Because truly, like, you can push yourself to points and limits that I feel like most people don't actually do just because they're not putting themselves in that environment. So I think ultimately the next thesis to that is just like getting, again, I said it earlier in the podcast and the conversation, is getting super comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think that's a powerful theme to live by.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So we've worked together now for 6 months in a very, minimal capacity through meetings and whatnot. But we've hung out the last couple of days and shared a lot between each other. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what advice would you have for me?
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, to be honest, X, like you are in a position, we're pretty much the same age, maybe by a year or not. And I feel like you're doing a lot of incredible things right now that a lot of 26-year-olds are just not doing. So, I mean, if anything, we should swap seats and maybe I'll run the podcast in the next time and survey you. But right now, in terms of where you are at, like the things that I would maybe give you advice on is don't lose that fire that you have right now. I just feel like you're in a position right now where you're, again, like very privileged to have got cool opportunities in front of you, and like me and like both of us, I think we capitalize hard on those opportunities. Mm-hmm. So I think like my ultimate thing is don't lose that fire. I think every year a person ages, some people tend to just like get tired of work. They, work a little bit less. It's not even about working
Become
more
content.
hours. They become content. They become comfortable. They become overly comfortable. And I don't think you're at that position by any means, but I think it can happen faster than you might know. And I've noticed days too. Where I was like, hey, I don't feel as motivated as I normally do. And I think like it's really important to not get so used to that mindset. And again, I want to be realistic. It's not like you can wake up every single day and be like, I'm going to give it 110% every single day. Like, yeah, everybody wants to do that, but that doesn't always happen. Like, I'm going to be realistic here. I think just be incredibly mindful and aware of how much effort, how much work you're actually putting in, how much output you're putting in. Like, I'm not saying you need to be working 90 hours, 100 hours a week. I would be just a very output-focused person, an output-focused leader, and be, I guess just like a visionary, and think, long-term around what you can do to continue this momentum that you have and ensure that it doesn't die out and, just continue to kind of scale your empire.
Is there anything that you'd like to add before we jump off here?
I think overall, I think you asked a lot of good questions. We covered a lot of good areas. I think, for folks that are listening, for people that are looking at different career paths, different jobs, you can always hit me up. I'm sure we'll leave my information, at the end of this podcast. I would guarantee subscribe to Xavier's stuff, listen to him as well. Come visit us. Come visit me in San Francisco. Come visit.
Yeah, you can always come visit here.
Yeah, X and Xavier in Indianapolis. They're fun cities to be in, and hopefully, our relationship is going to continue to grow, which it will. Our respective companies will continue to grow. So it's an exciting time. I think COVID really sucked the life out of a lot of companies and out of a lot of people, but I think it was kind of a blessing in disguise too, because it gave everybody a little bit of like a restart and a refresh. And I'm excited to continue seeing what, folks like X are doing and continue to see where companies go. Let's just keep this train going and keep on moving.
Awesome.
If you're ever interested in learning more about Athelas specifically, absolutely reach out to me. Again, our info will be here, but we are a incredibly fast-growing company, currently valued at $6 billion, really looking to scale our team, scale our clientele. We offer basically full-scale medical solutions and automated services that can improve sort of, the financial infrastructure, clinical infrastructure, administrative infrastructure across all healthcare organizations, similar to Xavier's. So we're doing some cool stuff out here. Hit me up on LinkedIn and any other channel, and we can kind of talk a little bit more, but really appreciate it.
Awesome, Bish. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, dude. I look forward to doing this again.
Hell yeah.
Seriously.
We should.
Awesome,
Absolutely.
man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Xavier.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.